Have you ever noticed how the silence of a woman alone is more unsettling than 1,000 words? Why is it that when a woman chooses her own company, she's still seen as lonely or lost? In this video, you'll discover that the woman who lives alone isn't lacking. She's under construction, or rather, in expansion. Together, we'll break down the stigmas that surround autonomous women, dive into the true meaning of emotional freedom, and understand why female independence still threatens so many people. Could it be that what bothers them is that she doesn't need to be saved? Or that by not needing, she threatens a system built on dependency? In this deep dive, we'll talk about the silent strength of a woman who chooses her own presence, the deconstruction of the needy and abandoned woman, and what Jungian psychology has to say about all this. You'll realize that what they once called coldness was actually self-awareness. And maybe by hearing this story, you'll begin to rewrite your own. If this message stirs something within you, like the video, leave a comment below saying, "I chose myself," and subscribe to the channel for content that strengthens your soul. Because when a woman awakens, she no longer needs to be accepted. She begins to choose herself. Why does a woman who doesn't wait to be saved still scare so many people? Is it because she doesn't bow down? Or because she learned how to rise on her own? Women who live alone, or simply choose themselves, are still seen as a threat. But a threat to what? To control? To the illusion of love as dependency? To the belief that a woman only has value if she belongs to someone? They are not cold. They are selective. They know energy is sacred, and that the warmth of their fire shouldn't be wasted on those who only know how to extinguish it. How many times have you burned yourself trying to warm someone who never wanted to feel your heat? How many times have you confused affection with salvation? These women have learned they don't need to be rescued, because they were never lost. They were shaping themselves, while the world kept insisting something in them was broken. But what was broken was the mirror, showing only fragmented versions of the feminine. Now, they've shattered the logic. They don't ask for space. They take it. They don't beg for love. They overflow with it. And that scares people, because whole women cannot be controlled. And if you feel that this video is opening something inside you, like it, comment, and subscribe. Write in the comments, "I don't need to be saved, I am the fire." And stay with us, because this journey was just beginning. Why do some women disturb others, even without saying a word? Why does their mere wholeness provoke so much criticism, judgment, and even fear? Carl Jung once said, "Everything we deny in ourselves becomes shadow." And what do we do with that shadow? We project it. Yes, we project onto the free woman what we didn't have the courage to become. Onto the firm woman, what we still can't hold ourselves. Onto the solitary woman, our deep fear of silence. These women become mirrors of everything the collective unconscious is still trying to hide. Too much boldness, too much freedom, too much self-confidence. But is it really too much? Or is it simply what should be natural, but is still rare? The truth is, these women are not showing off. They are preserving themselves. They're not looking for applause. They're seeking authenticity. They don't want to be worshipped. They want to be whole. And that's the real trigger. Because when we see them walking alone, we don't just see them. We see what we're missing. They awaken what has been dormant. They light up the shadow that many pretend not to have, and deep down, the discomfort isn't with them. It's with what they force us to see inside ourselves. Have you ever felt the peace that exists in the silence of being with yourself? Have you noticed the big difference between loneliness and solitude? Loneliness is absence. Solitude is presence. The woman who chooses solitude is not running from the world. She's reconnecting with it from the inside out. And why does that bother people so much? Maybe because we live in a culture that teaches us to fear silence, that confuses noise with life, and sound with love. But her silence is not emptiness. It's sanctuary. She doesn't build walls to protect herself from the world. She builds inner temples so she doesn't lose herself. In solitude, she hears what the world doesn't know how to say, and she feels what no one ever had the courage to give her. There, in that space between one thought and another, she meets her shadows, her wounds, and her light, and the deeper she dives, the more she realizes that true companionship begins in the heart, because once you learn to be at peace with your own presence, you'll never again accept crumbs in the name of any company. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, when exactly did your awakening begin? Maybe it wasn't on a happy day. Maybe it began the moment you broke, when you realized that calling love something that diminished you was a silent form of betrayal. The awakened woman didn't get here by accident. She came through the pathways of pain, through childhood alleyways that were never lit, through loves that promised everything and delivered almost nothing. She once believed she had to earn affection, that she had to shapeshift to be accepted, that she had to dim herself to be chosen. But one day she got tired. And when she got tired, she went silent. And when she went silent, she listened. She heard the wounded girl, the exhausted woman, and the soul screaming for wholeness. That's when everything changed. She doesn't reject love, but she won't sell herself for a piece of it anymore, what many call coldness. She calls clarity. Now she knows, missing someone is not a good enough reason to stay. And being alone is not a sign of failure, it's a mark of maturity. She didn't harden, she refined herself, and in the process, stopped accepting being half. Because she understood that real love never asks you to disintegrate. Do you know what it really means to become whole? It's not an easy process, nor a fast one. It's an underground journey, made in the darkness of the soul. This woman, who now walks with strength, has already descended into the depths of her own unconscious. She's gotten lost in the labyrinth of her own shadows. And there, she found the missing pieces of herself. She went through the process Jung called individuation. She crossed the dark night of the soul, without a map, without shortcuts, and came back carrying something the world cannot name, true presence. How many times have you run from your own shadow, thinking it was your failure? What if it's actually the key to your rebuilding? The whole woman is not perfect. She's honest. She doesn't hide the wound. She honors it, because only those who have faced the darkest parts of themselves can now sustain their own light. This woman learned that being half of herself to please others is far too high a price. And that wholeness does scare people, because no one can possess what is already complete on its own. She no longer belongs to someone else. She is a whole, and her presence reveals the absence of those still living in pieces. Have you ever been in a relationship where it felt easier to disappear than to be seen? Have you ever accepted crumbs, thinking it was a feast? How many times did you silence your voice, your body, your light, just so you wouldn't lose someone? But one day, that woman looked in the mirror and didn't recognize herself. She saw in her eyes the reflection of a life that no longer belonged to her, and it was there, in the quietest pain, that she made the bravest decision of all. Better alone than invisible. She understood that what hurt wasn't the lack of love, it was the excess of abandonment disguised as affection. That's when she stopped begging for presents and made a sacred vow to herself. Never again accept less than she deserves. Never again shrink to fit inside anyone's emotional pocket. Never again confuse control with care. Now she knows. True love doesn't suffocate, it sets you free. And if you're hearing this now, maybe you're feeling it too, that your time has come, the time to break, to rebuild, to make the same vow with your own heart, because sometimes that you have to bleed to be reborn. What is love? when it comes wrapped in the loss of self. How many times were we taught that to love meant to give everything, even if it meant disappearing? But this woman, the one who awakened, the one who made a vow to herself, now understands. Love is not salvation. It's an alliance. She no longer wants stories full of empty promises. She wants real presence. She wants hands that touch, but also hold. Eyes that see, not scrutinize. And a heart that joins hers, without invading. She's no longer afraid of being alone. What she fears now is losing herself for someone else, and that's why she chooses differently. She chooses a love that walks beside her, not ahead of her. That embraces without imprisoning. That desires without dominating. Because she knows to love is not to surrender to the other. It is to see yourself in their mirror and still remain whole. And perhaps this is the new love. The love of someone who has healed enough to no longer accept anything less than the truth. And what if the woman you once knew no longer exists? What if, in place of the one who wanted to be desired, stands one who demands to be respected? We are witnessing the rise of a new archetype, a woman who doesn't live to please nor to fit in. She lives to expand. She stopped dressing for others' eyes, stopped speaking with fear of disappointing, stopped existing in function of others' approval. She chose essence over performance, truth over applause. And what was once called arrogance is now self-love in its rawest form. Have you noticed how this woman irritates those who feed on submission? It's because she no longer needs to compete, nor prove herself. She already knows who she is. This new archetype doesn't want to be molded. It wants to be recognized. She doesn't bow to the fear of rejection because she has understood that the cost of self-erasure is always higher than the cost of solitude. She lives for truth, for vibration, for integrity, and anyone who comes near feels it. This woman is non-negotiable. Have you noticed that the silence of some women carries a force no words could ever translate? It's not a silence born of fear, nor of omission. It's the silence of someone who has realized she no longer needs to prove anything. These women don't argue to be heard. They choose silence because they know true power doesn't shout, it resonates. While the world runs to be noticed, they rest in subtlety. While others beg for validation, they retreat to reconnect. Carl Jung once said, "He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens." And this woman has awakened. She made peace with her ghosts, descended into the basements of her soul and cleaned every corner with her own hands. Now, she is a temple. She no longer needs anyone's approval because she has learned to approve of herself in silence. And maybe you are hearing the call of this same quiet. Maybe your soul is tired of the noise and is asking for something more sacred. Presence, pause, depth. Because when a woman silences, wisdom speaks. Have you ever felt like you were carrying a pain that wasn't just yours? An ancient sadness that seems to have come from women before you? From stories that were never told, yet live inside your body? This woman, the one blooming today, once had her roots burned in the emotional hell of her own story. She faced not only her own wounds, but the ancestral pain passed down to her as inheritance. She felt in her flesh the toxic cycles repeating from generation to generation, and she said, "Enough." She descended into her own abyss, cried over what never had a name, and there, in the dark, she did something few have the courage to do. She planted light. Now, she has returned, stronger, clearer, more whole, but different. Because once you've touched your own hell, you don't surrender to just any paradise made of illusion. She knows there are loves that only pretend to care. that some bonds imprison, disguised as affection. Today, she recognizes the difference between true presence and emotional performance, between a hug and a noose. She doesn't close herself off, but she doesn't bow either. Her branches reach the sky, but her roots know exactly where they came from. And maybe as you hear this, you're also feeling, it's time to break the cycle. It's time to return to yourself. Do you feel that there's a woman inside you who was never tamed? A force that can't be explained, but pulses? A knowing that doesn't come from logic, but from intuition? That woman is not new. She is as ancient as the earth, and after walking through the fire of pain, the darkness of the soul, the silences imposed upon her, she has returned, wild, sovereign, whole. She doesn't need validation. She feels. She doesn't need permission. She knows. She doesn't need an audience because her truth is already an altar. The world tries to call her difficult. But the truth is, she simply stopped conforming. She doesn't live to fit in. She lives to expand. Her no is clear, like an arrow released. Her energy filters what enters. She does not adapt to those who do not respect her nature. This woman has heard the call of her soul, and now she dances with life, not to please, but to remember who she has always been. She carries the cycles, the moons, the wombs that came before her, and every step she takes echoes in the bones of all those who were once silenced. And if you feel her inside you, don't silence her, because when the wild woman awakens, nothing can control her, and everything around begins to bow to her truth. What happens when a woman stops waiting to be chosen, when she no longer reshapes herself to be accepted and starts living in alignment with her own truth? Can you feel it in the air? This silent movement, almost invisible, but it's changing everything. She doesn't need to shout, yet her presence shifts entire structures. She doesn't need to confront. Her existence alone disrupts the system, because the world was built for women who sacrifice, who yield, who dim themselves in the name of a love, a family, a peace that was never truly theirs. But now, she chose herself. And that is dangerous. Dangerous to those who profit from female insecurity, to those who feed off guilt, silence, and obedience dressed up as affection. This woman represents a new paradigm. She is not defined by status or function. She is defined by essence. She no longer seeks approval. She seeks freedom. And every time one woman chooses herself, others around her begin to awaken. It's a revolution that makes no noise, but it shakes the foundation of everything built without soul. And maybe that revolution is already happening inside of you. And what if the woman you've heard about until now is you? Or maybe she is the woman you are becoming, little by little, in silence, to the rhythm of your own healing. Have you ever wondered if the loneliness you feel isn't a void but a womb, a fertile space where something new is being born? A new version of yourself, clearer, stronger, more whole? And what if what you called running away was actually a return to your essence, to your forgotten voice, to your true name? This journey requires no haste, no perfection, only presence. Maybe everything begins when you stop chasing and start returning inward, because transformation doesn't arrive with applause. It arrives with silence, with tears, with small no's spoken with firmness, and great yeses whispered to the mirror. This is the invitation, not to become someone else, but to remember who you have always been. And if you've made it this far, something in you has already answered. So now, tell me truthfully, how many times have you forgotten your own strength because the world taught you to doubt it? How many times have you silenced your truth for fear of making others uncomfortable? Maybe this video touched something you didn't even know still hurt. Or maybe it lit a flame that had been asleep for a long time. If it did, it wasn't by chance. It was a reunion, a reminder that choosing yourself is not selfishness. It is survival. It is rebirth. And this journey doesn't end here. On the contrary, it's only just beginning. In the next video, you'll dive even deeper. We'll reveal the invisible power of the woman who refuses to shrink, and the silent impact she creates in the world simply by being herself. If this message touched your soul like this video, subscribe to the channel to continue this journey with us and leave a comment below. I choose myself every single day, because when a woman finds her voice, she doesn't scream, she transforms. And if you're here, it's because something in you has already begun to change.